You grow up watching your father do math on napkins, not because he's brilliant, because he can't afford paper. Medellin, 1994. You're 9 years old. The city smells like diesel and cut mangoes and something else, something heavier that you don't have a word for yet. You'll learn that word later. The word is consequence. Your father runs a small cambio booth near the market, currency exchange. He knows the spread between the peso and the dollar before the banks open. He can calculate interest in his head faster than a calculator. And he is always broke. You watch him and you think the knowledge isn't the problem. The problem is who he works for. He's doing the math for someone else's money. You are 12 when you decide that will never be you. You are not wrong about that. You are wrong about everything else. You get a scholarship, economics, Universidad de los Andes in Bogota. You are the first person in your family to leave the city for school. Your mother cries at the bus terminal. Your father shakes your hand. Neither of them say what they're actually thinking, which is, don't come back poor. You study hard. Not because you love economics. You don't, not at first. You study because you understand the game now. Money is language, and if you learn the language fluently, with no accent, no hesitation, then the people who own the money have to let you in the room. By your third year, you're doing freelance accounting work for 3 restaurants, a textile exporter, and 1 law firm whose billing practices you never ask about. You're making more than your professors. You stay quiet about it. After graduation, you get hired by a mid-sized financial consultancy in Bogota. Corporate clients. Offshore structuring. Shell companies registered in Panama, Delaware, the Cayman Islands. The partners call it tax optimization. You learn very quickly that tax optimization and money laundering are the same act performed by people wearing different suits. The difference is your client list. So far yours is clean. You tell yourself that matters. The man's name is Renato. He comes in through a referral from your firm's biggest client. He's 55, quiet, wears a Patek Philippe, worth more than your parents' house. He never raises his voice. People like that scare you more than the loud ones. He doesn't tell you who he represents. He doesn't have to. You already know. This is Medellin. You grew up watching the napkin math. You know what the numbers look like when the source is underground. He has $4.2 million he needs moved into legitimate real estate holdings before the end of the quarter. He's been given your name. He asks if you can help. You say you need to think about it. He says, of course. He leaves you a card. The card has no name on it, just a number. You think about it for 11 days. You think about your father's napkin math. You think about the cambio booth. You think about all the people who knew the language and still never got in the room, and then you call the number. ACT4, the first job $4.2 million. You split it across 18 transactions, 11 real estate purchases across 4 Colombian cities, 3 restaurant chains registered under 2 holding companies, 4 investment fund entries, each below the reporting threshold. You use shell companies you've already built for legitimate clients. You layer them. Company owns, company owns, company owns, company, until the original source is 8 steps removed. You charge $180,000 for the work. It takes you 6 weeks. Nothing gets flagged. Nothing gets seized. No one comes asking questions. Renato sends a bottle of scotch and a brief message. Same time next quarter. You tell yourself this is the last time. You say that with genuine conviction. You have read enough history to know that every person who has ever said that also meant it. By the end of the second year, you have 3 clients. Not Renato's group anymore. Renato's group led to another group, a referral, the same way respectable business always moves, through trusted networks and quiet recommendations. You are 29, you move to a better apartment. You buy your mother a house in a quiet neighborhood outside Medellin. She asks you what you do exactly. You tell her you're a financial consultant. She doesn't ask again. You are grateful for that. And that gratitude is the first thing you should have been ashamed of. By year 3, you have 5 clients across 3 different organizations. You have restructured your entire operation. You work through an intermediary, a lawyer in Panama City who receives the briefs, strips the identifying details, and forwards them to you as numbered portfolios. You never meet your clients directly. You never know exactly what the money funds. You tell yourself the distance makes you clean. You are not clean. Distance is not innocence. It is just architecture. Here's what you are actually good at. Not moving money. Anyone can move money. What you are good at is making money look bored. Dirty money is loud. It arrives in amounts that don't fit the businesses it's supposed to come from. A fruit stand turning $800,000 profit. A parking garage with revenues that exceed the airport. The numbers scream if you know what to listen for. Your job is to make the numbers whisper. Better yet, yawn. You want auditors to look at your structures and feel nothing. No curiosity. No raised eyebrow. Just the mild tedium of legitimate commerce doing what legitimate commerce does. You invent personas, investors, family trusts, inheritance structures. A retired Belgian construction executive who has a portfolio of South American agribusinesses. He doesn't exist, but his tax filings are immaculate. His 5-year returns are modest, unremarkable, safe. You love the work. That's the part you don't let yourself say out loud. You love the puzzle, the architecture, the elegant disappearing act of it. You are an artist who cannot show anyone their work. You are 34. 6 clients now, across what you've been told are 4 separate organizations. You've moved an estimated $340 million in 4 years. You've kept 2.1% across the board. Your personal net worth is somewhere north of $7 million, held across 14 accounts in 9 countries, none of which are Colombia. You have a girlfriend, Valentina. She teaches architecture at the university. She knows you are wealthy. She knows you work in finance. She once looked at your bookshelf, full of accounting text, regulatory law, offshore jurisdictions, and said you're the most boring, interesting person she's ever met. You laughed. You didn't correct her. There's a Tuesday in March when you move $40 million in a single afternoon, across 6 portfolios, 11 countries, 22 vehicles. By 6 p.m., it is gone, dissolved into the global economy like sugar in warm water. You go home. Valentina has made soup. You eat together at a small table near the window. She talks about a student whose thesis on brutalist facades is going to be brilliant. You listened. You are fully present. This is the best evening of your life. You don't know that yet. One of your portfolios is numbered 7 Delta. You've handled it for 2 years. Consistent flows, clean structure, nothing unusual. Then your intermediary sends an update. A shift in the beneficial ownership layer, routine, happens occasionally when organizations restructure internally, but this time a name appears in the documentation that shouldn't be there. A clerical error by someone downstream. Just a name. A woman's name. 28 years old, Guatemalan, and a case file number you recognize because it's been in the news. Because she was found. You stare at it for a long time. You've told yourself for 5 years that you do not know what the money funds. You told yourself you are a courier, a mathematician, a technician. The name looks back at you. You close the file. You complete the transaction. The $40 million you moved on that Tuesday afternoon, some of it was 7 Delta money. You know that now. That night, Valentina makes soup again. You do not taste it. You terminate 7 Delta. You tell your intermediary it's a conflict of interest. No details. You lose $280,000 a year in fees. You let it go. You tell yourself this is the line. This is where you draw it. You draw new rules. No portfolios involving movement of people. No portfolios where the end product touches children. You tell your intermediary this through a coded system you built. It sounds like risk tolerance parameters. It is, in fact, the only moral document you have ever written. You do not stop. You only narrow the category of evil you are willing to service. You are still laundering money for organizations that run cocaine through 5 continents, that bribe officials, that kill competitors with industrial efficiency. But not that. Not 7 Delta. You've drawn the line. The line doesn't make you better. It makes you feel better, which is worse. Valentina leaves, not because she knows, because she senses. You become careful in a way she can't name. She says you're present, but not there. She says it feels like loving a window. She can see something through you, but can't touch what's on the other side. She was right. You have been maintaining a performance of yourself for so long that you are no longer sure what the original looked like. The economist from Medellin who wanted to know the language, get in the room. That person made a call 11 years ago. He has been dissolving slowly ever since. Your father dies. Stroke. You fly home. At the funeral, you are surrounded by people who know you as the son who made good. A financial consultant. You pay for everything. The burial, the reception, the gravestone. Your mother squeezes your hand and says your father would be proud. You stand at the grave and do the math. Your father spent his life doing honest work with honest numbers and died without savings. You have $14 million in accounts he never knew existed, generated by moving the money of people who traffic cocaine and fund violence across 3 continents. The arithmetic does not resolve. You have been in this world for 11 years now. You know things, not because anyone told you, but because a financial map of an organization tells you everything about how it operates, what it prioritizes, where it's vulnerable. You know which cartel has been investing in political infrastructure. The shell companies quietly funding regional governors' campaigns in 3 countries. You know which organization has diversified so completely into legitimate business that, within 15 years, it will be indistinguishable from a multinational corporation. You know which group is hemorrhaging money due to internal theft from a mid-level lieutenant they haven't identified yet. You're functionally an intelligence asset who has never been recruited. You know this. The people you work for have probably figured it out too. That is the moment you realize your safety has never been a product of your caution. It's been a product of your usefulness. The day you stop being useful, or the day a government agency makes you a better offer, is the day you become a loose end. You start keeping records, not to use, just to have. You build a dead man's switch. Encrypted server. 3 separate geographic redundancies. A law firm in Zurich holding a sealed brief with instructions. If you stop checking in every 48 hours, the brief gets opened and the files go to 6 journalists across 4 countries. It's not a plan, it's a stalemate. You are 41 when a man contacts you through a channel no one should have. Not your intermediary. Directly. He is a senior analyst at a financial intelligence unit. He is not Colombian. He speaks to you in English, which is its own kind of signal. He says, we know most of it, not everything, but enough. He says, we're not interested in you. We're interested in what you can tell us. He says, full immunity, new identity, relocation, ongoing consulting contract. He slides a number across, a monthly retainer. It is almost insultingly less than what you currently make. He either doesn't know your fee structure or is making a point. You ask for 2 weeks. He says you have 72 hours. You spend those 72 hours not sleeping, not analyzing, just sitting with it. The offer sounds like an exit, but exits from this world aren't exits, they're relocations. You trade one set of people who might kill you for a different institution that owns you. You still have no life. You just have different handlers. You decline. He nods like he expected it. He leaves a card, no name, just a number. You've seen this before. You hold it for a moment and then put it in your wallet, which is the most honest answer you've given anyone in years. You are in Zurich now. You have been here for 3 years. You have a small consultancy, genuinely legitimate corporate clients, unremarkable billings. It is cover and it is also real. You started to forget which parts of your life are constructed and which parts just happened. You still have 2 clients. You've told yourself many times you'll drop to 1, then to none, but the logic always reasserts itself. If you disappear entirely, you become a question. Questions get investigated. Staying slightly visible, slightly useful, means you remain an answer they already have. You walk the same route every morning, coffee at the same cafe. You know the barista's name. She knows your order. You don't know if you like this life or if you simply run out of the energy to want a different one. Some mornings you sit by the window of the cafe and watch the street and think about your father's napkin math. You think about the scholarship. The kid who wanted to learn the language. Get in the room. You got in the room. That part worked. The part you didn't account for is that once you're in the room, you don't get to leave just because you want to. You only leave when they're done with you. or when you're done with yourself, and you're not sure which comes first. The numbers still run in your head every morning. Clean, precise, elegant. The puzzle still gives you a satisfaction you cannot find anywhere else. That's the thing about this world. It doesn't keep you because it threatens you. It keeps you because you're good at it, and being good at something, really genuinely, surgically good at it, is the most seductive trap ever built. Epilogue. There's a number in your phone. The intelligence analyst card, saved and encrypted. You've looked at it 37 times in 3 years. You've come close twice. Your mother calls on Sundays. She is happy. She tells you the neighbors are nice. She says she's proud of you. Every Sunday you say thank you, and you mean it, and you hate yourself for meaning it. The dead man switch checks in automatically every 48 hours. You set it and mostly forget it's running. Mostly. The cafe barista asked you once what you do. You said finance. She nodded and said, "That sounds stressful." You laughed. The laugh was real. Sometimes real things still happen. This morning you get a message through your intermediary. A new portfolio. Clean profile. Standard structure. Commodities adjacent. No red flags in the brief. You open your laptop. You start doing the math. Call to action. The story is fiction, but the system it describes is real. Right now, somewhere in a quiet city in a clean apartment, someone with a very good education and no criminal record is moving money for people whose names you'd recognize. The financial system doesn't have a crime problem, it has an architecture problem. And the architects all got scholarships. If this made you think, drop a comment with the line that hit hardest. Subscribe for more. See you in the next one.